Hello, everybody, and welcome to this One Spatial fireside chat about delivering better data with One Data Gateway. My name is Mark Bell, and I head up the transportation and infrastructure vertical within One Spatial, and I'm joined today by...
Hi, I'm Seb Lessware, and I'm Chief Technology Officer at One Spatial.
Hello, Seb. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good, good. Should we take a seat by the fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Right. Well, actually, before we do that, let's just have a pause, because when I looked at the brief of this fireside chat, the first question that came to my mind was, well, what is a fireside chat? Is it taking a seat next to the fire in a pub, a couple of pints, cozying down and putting the world to rights, or is it sort of sitting in around a campfire in the forest, and again under the stars, maybe with a couple of pints and sort of mulling life and putting the world to the rights? Or is it more not so much being in the forest, but being on the edge of the forest, watching it burn? And I think, frankly, it's probably this latter one, because when it comes to quality of data flowing through infrastructure owner operator build supply chains, I think that's really the space that we're sitting in. So let's assume we're stood on the edge of this burning forest, Seb, whilst we have our conversation, and let's turn our minds towards the challenge facing infrastructure owner operators and the data flowing through their supply chains.
Okay.
So let's imagine here we have a asset owner operator, and as you know, there's teams of people within that organization all doing their own sort of tasks. They've got different tools they're using. They're interfacing with as well as that internal infrastructure owner operator. It also has a number of tiers of organizations supporting it. So tiers 1s, 2s, 3s, and these are organizations within the supply chain supporting those teams within that asset owner operator to perform operational and strategic tasks which enable that organization to perform. So we can look at this as an internal supply chain of people all interacting with corporate databases, but also with each other and their own silos of data. But there's also these other these other folks within the organization doing exactly the same. So it turns into be quite a messy sort of affair, and there's a potential for poor data quality within that internal supply chain. But there's also the concept of the external supply chain, where data flows out from that asset owner operator, may flow through the tiers of organizations, or be captured within those tiers and come back into the asset owner operator. Again, there's a smooth looking arrow here, but the reality is it's never as simple and smooth as that, is it? We tend to have data passing out to the supply chains and coming back in, and it can be captured using a variety of different tools and processes and specifications, which all can introduce their own unique errors of completeness and correctness into the data as it flows towards the asset owner operator. And that in turn can introduce poor quality data into the corporate databases, but also can introduce delays into the capture of that data as that data is as it is pushed back to the supply chains to be recaptured. So I don't know if that's something. Well, I mean, I definitely see that within the market, and you as a CTO, you probably see that within other verticals and within the industry.
Yeah, that pattern that we see, I mean, it happens in all sorts of industries, that data quality and that flow of data. And one of the common questions that we always ask and customers always ask is, so what does it matter? We're building a bridge. What does the data really matter?
Yeah, and it's a good question. I playing devil's advocate here, but I'd probably say yes, good quality data does matter, because it's a foundation for decent knowledge and the derision of, or the derision of insights from that data. So yes, I would argue that good quality data does matter. And here's a good case in point. This is quite relevant to this sector. And if you imagine, I mean, this concept of supply chain data quality could be, it could sit within utilities, it could sit within government organisations collecting census data, it could sit within rail organisations, passing out mapping data into the fields and collecting engineering and BIM data. But in this situation, we're looking at the collection of crash information or accident information by the police, collection of that using a variety of different tools from the different police local authorities, and that data being passed up through the local authorities to the owner, the owner operator, and eventually to the Department of Transport to influence of insights around accidents and really sort of channel funding towards improved or focused road schemes to reduce accidents. However, the problems we've seen with this, I don't know if I know you're aware of this, but there's, again, the police are using a variety of different tools, a variety of different processes to capture this information, and they may not be even capturing it on the side of the road. They may be collecting that information back in the cozy confines of their offices. So you've got a variety of different information being collected. It may eventually work its way out to the local authorities who integrate this data from various accidents together and then pass it on to the owner operator, which in turn collates and integrates this data together. But within that a variety of different errors. They may be positional errors, but there may be errors around completeness or correctness in terms of the kind of the textual fields that have been written for these accidents. So it's really one that I was highlighting there, and I'm sure you're going to touch on this in a bit, but one of the things that we use as a cloud-based solution called Data Gateway to help really manage the quality of that data as it flows through these air gaps between these organizations. But
yeah, that's right. The because one of the things we see is that as well as helping with the sort of tactical day-to-day, having the data right, it helps take a long-term view and help you in this whole life cycle of the assets that you're building in this example, and then it ultimately reduces the cost of the whole program overall, as long as you can enforce that data quality at the individual steps where the data is passing through.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, should we touch on, this is a potential solution, but in general, how would you, if we've got poor data flowing through supply chains, flowing between contractually bound teams or organizations, I mean, I think the slide says it, but one way of managing the quality of that data?
Yeah, we always say in these situations, and this is a massive sort of industry push, is around automation, because what we're trying to do and what organizations are trying to do is reduce both the manual effort of doing things, because it takes time, costs money, and it's a distraction for people when you're trying to build something, is collect the data, but also make it as easy and simple as possible so that it doesn't involve human error, and it's an incentive for people to do it because it's a low barrier for them to achieve supplying the data. But also, if you can automate the receipt and ingestion and use of that data, then you can much more quickly make use of it for your forward planning and your costing and your maintenance regimes, and the quicker you have that data, the more effectively you can use it.
So you're saying, using automation not just to check and validate the quality of the data, but actually to manage the packets of data as they flow through the supply chain.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're hinting towards it. So we would suggest using automation to put out that forest fire that's raging beside us. I think you've touched on a couple of these benefits already, but do you want to sort of step through some of those?
Yeah, well, a key part of it is the obligation of the data suppliers. What are they mandated to provide, and sometimes they're encouraged, sometimes they're mandated. So having automation makes it easier for them to achieve it, but also makes it easier to measure what they're delivering. We can validate against the standard. Have you met the standard of the data that we've specified or not? And if not, we can help them meet the expectations and understand their expectations because we're delivering a report automatically saying, well, here are all the reasons why your data doesn't meet those standards. And then that becomes an efficient, repeatable process where they can be uploading data frequently, receiving informative reports when it can't be received, when it can't be accepted, and then when it is acceptable quality, making use of it downstream by automating and into the integration of that data into a central system. And then ultimately you've got this information that you can use in a dashboard to tell you what is the level of quality and how my supplier is doing.
Okay. Well, shall we step through a bit more of the chat? Now, we've mentioned about using One Data Gateway, and I'm conscious of the fact we've probably got about 4 or 5 minutes left of this chat. There's not much more forest that needs to burn. So, I mean, in terms of One Data Gateway, do you want to give us a brief summary of what it is and how it works?
Well, this was driven essentially by our user needs, where they wanted not just the low-level tools to help do data validation, data integration, but a portal where they could manage who supplies data, what and when, and who has access to it. Something that's very configurable, where the suppliers of the data get offered a very simple interface where they just click on the project they're reporting to and upload the data, and that's all they need to do. And if there's a problem, they'll have a report that they can download. And the receivers of the data configure this to allow who can access this, who's supplying my data, and what are their obligations. And it needs to be fairly flexible. So, for example, if different suppliers have different structures for their data, you need to be able to handle that in a seamless way across the different suppliers. And so it needs to be simple to use, simple to configure as well. And then what we see our customers, or the users of Data Gateway doing is they use it in a few different ways. One is, we talked about, submit data, accept it in, and have a report telling you it's acceptable. But if it's not acceptable, it won't get led into the system, and the report tells the supplier, this is what you need to do in order to correct it. And sometimes suppliers say, well, actually, I want a dry run. I'm not giving you the data yet. It's not ready. It's not complete. But I want to access the system and have a dry run to get the validation reports on the data that as it is going through. And then both supplier and receiver will want dashboards. Suppliers, what have I supplied and what level of quality is it? And as a receiver of the data, the owner operators, essentially, they want to see what is the quality and the standards to which my suppliers are giving me data to.
That's interesting. So another thing I pull out of that is the simplicity. You mentioned simplicity of configuration, simplicity of use, the ability to directly upload into sort of underlying corporate databases, and also manage that data as it comes from the supply chain, and manage the contractual relationships with those suppliers and see those presented in dashboard, which is pretty powerful. I mean, it's very powerful, in fact. So where does this leave us, Seb? We've got a couple more minutes. Well, I think Smokey the Bear says it correctly, or says it best. I mean, what we're suggesting with One Data Gateway isn't at all that clears and validates 100% of your data 100% of the time, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's something that will really automatically validate a large proportion of the errors and remove those, enabling the professional users who are collecting that data to focus more on their professional tasks as opposed to the kind of grungy data quality, data completeness capabilities, i.e. getting 90% of the data correct 100% of the time. I think at that point, I mean, have you any other comments before we kind of finish up at the side of the fire?
Well, only that the problem and therefore this solution will become more and more imperative as time goes on, because one of the innovations that we've seen happening over the last 5-10 years are new methods for capturing data, new hardware, drones, LiDAR, and that's only increasing the amount of data that's coming in and the frequency of that data, and therefore it will become increasingly unmanageable without automated tools for managing the quality and the receipt and integration of that.
Perfect, thank you. Well, Seb, once again, thank you for joining me beside this massive burning forest, and also thank you to the audience for taking time to listen to what we've had to say in our fireside chat. Feel free to contact us at One Spatial if you'd like to hear more about supply chain data quality and our One Data Gateway application. Until then, speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.